Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm joined by Nick White, co-founder of the Harmony Protocol. Nick, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Yonah. This is a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
All right, and now for Nick, for those who don't know or aren't familiar, why don't you give us a little background about what is the Harmony Protocol?
So Harmony is a protocol that has been designed from the ground up to be highly scalable. And what scalability means to us is high throughput, so we can have a lot of transactions, low cost, so it's cheap and accessible for people to use. And it's also has fast finality, meaning that you get a confirmation very quickly. And why this is important is because we care about bringing blockchain to the masses. And we felt that in order for blockchain to really have impact as a platform for technologies like decentralized finance, or even social 3.0, those kinds of movements, we needed a blockchain platform that could actually support millions, if not even in the future, billions of users. And so that's what Harmony Protocol is all about. And we achieve that with some new technology, namely sharding and proof of stake. So we're actually the very first blockchain to launch sharding and proof of stake together, even though many different projects have been trying to get there. We're really proud to be the first one.
Cough, cough, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so what is it about that combination? You mentioned you guys are the first ones to do, sharding with proof of stake. What is it about that combination that holds so much promise? And what's about that combination that makes it so damn hard to integrate together?
Well, proof of stake is a new kind of consensus and security mechanism that allows for a lot of new and better properties for blockchains. So first of all, proof of stake, as opposed to proof of work, doesn't require you to do all this hashing, which is very energy intensive and therefore expensive. So it's actually very costly for upkeep to run a proof of work blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum or most of the legacy blockchains out there. A proof of stake system, by contrast, the security is derived from just staking the asset, the native asset. And so you're not burning energy, you're just putting assets, you're locking them up to secure the network. So cost becomes a very big part of what makes proof of stake better. The other advantage of proof of stake is that you can have a different kind of consensus mechanism. In our case, we use what's called PBFT, but we've modified it with a new kind of signature scheme called BLS multi-signatures to make it faster. So in a proof of work context, you have what's called probabilistic finality. And that means that, each additional block that gets added to the chain increases the likelihood that block is final. Whereas in proof of stake, as soon as that block has been voted in and is in consensus, it is final forever. It's not going to be reverted. So that allows you to have a faster consensus. So that's why Harmony is both cheaper to use. We're about 1/10,000th of a cent for every transaction. And we reach finality in 5 seconds versus 10 minutes for Bitcoin or 1.5 minutes for Ethereum. So that's the proof of stake side. And then the sharding side, sharding is all about how do we make it so that blockchains can be scalable for, again, millions, if not in the future, billions of people. If we want the whole world to be using these blockchain systems, it needs to be capable of supporting that kind of scale. And what sharding does is a typical blockchain, a legacy blockchain, there's only one chain. And everyone that wants to use this blockchain has to go and put their transaction in these blocks. But the blocks have a limited amount of data that can fit inside them. And therefore, there's a limited amount of transactions and a limited amount of users it can support. A sharded blockchain changes this paradigm and creates an architecture where you have multiple blockchains running side by side in parallel. And as you need to add more throughput because you have more users or more applications, you add new blockchains. And each one, and they all act, they all seem to the user, to the developer, as one coherent unit. So there's an abstraction. And that's the power of sharding, is that in theory, you don't have a limit to your throughput. You don't have a limit to the amount of data that you can put into the system. So it overcomes this problem of getting congested, which, Ethereum right now is actually extremely congested. It's great because it's, achieving a lot of adoption, but adoption and usage leads to, a lack of being able to support those same users. So that's why proof of stake and sharding are so important to us.
Is sharding, would that be considered a layer 1 or layer 2 solution?
Layer 1, but it's sort of, there are parallels in a lot of these kind of systems. Like a sharding allows for multiple blockchains to talk to each other and act like one unit. It's actually more similar to, like, let's say a Cosmos type of ecosystem, where you have different blockchains, but they're able to communicate with each other via the IBC protocol. But there's also parallels with layer 2s, and that layer 2s are sort of like parallel blockchains that then revert back to the base chain, which would be Ethereum in most of the cases. So there are similarities. But one of the things, getting back to your question about why is proof of stake and sharding so hard to do together, it's that sharding by itself, it's a new consensus mechanism altogether. And the first proof of stake chains only really came out a few years ago. So it's a very novel technology in and of itself. And when you add sharding to the mix, there's a lot of complexity that you have to deal with in allowing for cross-shard transactions to be feasible, to allow for these different shards or different parallel chains to communicate with each other in a secure way adds a lot of different potential edge cases and different potential bugs that can be introduced. So building something that works takes a lot of not only technical design work and expertise, but also practical know-how. It's like, you don't really, it's one thing to design something in theory, but then to make it work and ship it is another thing. I think that's also one of the things that is what's causing the delays in projects like v2.0. It's a lot easier to talk about these systems than to actually build them and put them into production.
Well, I mean, I take my hat off to you guys at Harmony, and you guys not only walk the walk, you talk the talk, but you walk the walk. You guys were actually able to pull it off, the first ones to pull it off. Now, you mentioned a little bit, we spoke about kind of the pros of proof of stake, but a big knock, against proof of stake is that there's this claim that it enables the rich to just get richer, because it requires, you need to have the coin in order to stake, and the more coins you have, the more you can stake. How does Harmony counter this? I know you guys have effective proof of stake, which you guys claim counteracts this. How does that work?
Yeah, well, you bring up a really good point, which is that in proof of stake, you have this dynamic, which is that, the people who have the most stake will always be the ones who claim the most rewards from the system. And therefore, it's sort of a rich get richer outcome. And so one of the things that we did to try to combat this, and without, the truth is that without identity systems in blockchain, it's very hard to solve some of these problems. They're kind of inherent to these systems. But one of the things that we did to try to combat this in our own way is what we call effective proof of stake, which is a sort of reward mechanism that allows for people with less stake to earn more reward and people with more stake to earn less reward. So in that way, we've kind of adjusted the staking rewards to tax the rich, you might say, and give it to the poorer, people with less stake. And so it's something that we're very proud of, and we hope will, in the long run, allow the Harmony community to avoid that rich get richer outcome.
But wouldn't that de-incentivize the rich from, staking big stakes, or wouldn't they just break up their big stakes into a bunch of equal, like, littler stakes to kind of game the system, and then, and then therefore they're getting all that extra reward, and putting in the same stake, just in kind of sharding their stakes, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. You bring up a really good point. And so there's a bit of a trade-off in that as they split up their stake more, they will have to run more nodes. So they have to expend more energy. So and more cost. So there's a disincentive for them to do that. But you're right. It's really hard, and that's something that we're dealing with ourselves. And it's all an experiment. This is such a new field that the solutions, the playbook hasn't been written. So we're experimenting and seeing what works. And you're very right. It's hard without, and that's why I mentioned identity is one of the key factors here. With identity, then you could know that someone's just splitting up their stake into more pieces, and it's actually the same person. But without that, it's hard to know when someone is gaming the system or not. So we have to fall back on these inherent sort of protocol mechanisms and hope that they work. And for now, it's still an experiment.
Yeah, well, listen, like you mentioned, Joe, a lot of these problems are kind of inherent. The thing that gives these pros to these blockchains, they're anonymous, they're trustless, they're permission. They also cause their own problems inherent. So I really take my hat off to you for guys trying to work out these issues. I mean, you guys seem to be at the head of the pack in a lot of these places. You mentioned before that you guys also, Harmony has one of the quickest transaction finalities and block finality times with about 5 seconds now?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, that's for those who don't know, that is incredibly quick. Bitcoin's about 10 minutes. Ethereum's even above that. Especially when it comes to you're able to scale and you have low transaction fees. That's an incredible time. What kind of use cases does that enable to Harmony because they have that low block finality time as well as the low transaction fees? How do you envision use cases for Harmony?
That's a really good question. So I definitely think that the potential use cases for blockchain have been limited by the fact that most of these protocols are A, expensive, and B, quite slow. So, and even myself as someone who uses blockchain, I'm kind of conditioned to sort of just accept the fact that things are going to be expensive and kind of I'm going to be sitting at my computer waiting, while the wheel is spinning. It kind of feels like going back in time to the earlier days of the internet when I'm trying to load an image and it's like filling line by line. So I think that blockchain for the past 10 years, because I think it was about 10 years ago that the Bitcoin white paper was released and the Bitcoin network got started, was it really in a sort of developmental phase and sort of an infancy. And I think what we're trying to do as Harmony is take it to the next stage where, if old blockchains were more like dial-up connection, we want to be more like 5G. And if you think about it, how did that change the way that we use the internet, right? Before, the killer apps of the internet were instant messengers or email, right? Things that have a very low data rate. But now that we have a high data rate, we can, people are doing Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, streaming music, video, all of that. And everything is high data rate. Those are actually the most popular applications. So to be honest, it's still kind of unknown. I think that how this changes blockchain will only have to be discovered by the people who build on it. But one of the things that I'm very excited about kind of is the fact that if you look on Ethereum, obviously everyone who follows blockchain knows that decentralized finance is really the major use case that's emerging as something with product market fit on Ethereum. But the problem is recently it's becoming too popular and the blockchain is too congested. So it costs, and also the thing is that these transactions that you send into these DeFi protocols consume a lot of gas, meaning that they're very computationally expensive for the blockchain virtual machine. And so what that means is, like, as a user, I want to use Uniswap. I want to exchange some tokens. I got to pay a $10 or $20 transaction fee just to use it. And so I am really passionate about the fact that decentralized finance is built not for me at all. It's actually built for, you know, the 99%, the people who are unbanked, who are around the world, who don't have access to financial services. But if you tell them, hey, I have this amazing alternative, like, in fact, you don't need a bank, just use your cell phone. Oh, but by the way, every time you know, place a trade, or when you want to invest your money in savings, it's going to cost you $20, then it basically is a non-starter for them. So I think that I'm really excited about building a parallel DeFi ecosystem to Ethereum, but one at a much lower cost point. And lastly, just to talk about the transaction finality, it's a very different user experience when you are interacting with a blockchain that responds in real time. 5 seconds, the difference between 5 seconds and a minute and a half is completely different from a user perspective. We are programmed these days to tune out after 10 seconds. You know, if I'm loading a web page and it doesn't load in 5 seconds, I'm probably going to close it. And so I think that this will enable more people who might not be as familiar with blockchain to onboard into the ecosystem. So it opens up like a broader user base, and it opens us up to people who otherwise would be more skeptical if things were slow and expensive. So that's kind of some of the major things that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. You know, how we so expect these days everything technologically to be lightning quick. After 5 seconds, if it doesn't open, you're going to close it. You know, I think that also, do you see that enabling? You know, some things just aren't as possible, especially talking about transactions. If I go to a store and I want to spend money using blockchain technology, I'm not going to wait there for a minute and a half, definitely not 10 minutes to my transaction to go through. Do you see with this increase in speed of blockchains and how much throughput they're able to handle at one time, especially with the low transaction fees? Do you foresee Harmony or other blockchains kind of becoming the place where actual transactions, in-person transactions in real time could occur?
Absolutely. And I think that Harmony is actually a very good potential candidate for being a sort of settlement layer or a payment layer. Because again, you really want to have that fast finality. You don't want to be sitting at the checkout register waiting to get the response for a minute and a half that your transaction's been approved. But at the same time, in order to actually become a payment network, you need to have scalability. And, you know, often cited within the blockchain community, the Visa network, I think, runs at a roughly 5,000 transactions per second on average. And then I think it peaks around 20 to 25,000, which Harmony could definitely sustain, especially if we grew to that size, we can add more and more shards. And that's why, I mean, this kind of plugs into another use case. I don't know if I would call it a use case or sort of a segment within crypto, which is the stablecoin segment, which is something that we're really, really excited about. I think stablecoins, they kind of connect to DeFi, but they're sort of their own thing. It's basically putting a digital wrapper around traditional fiat currencies. I think it has tremendous potential. So we're really excited to be launching already two stablecoins. One is Binance US dollar stablecoin, and the other is actually Indonesian rupiah stablecoin. And we're looking to launch other stablecoins in different fiat currencies around the world. And this doesn't just open it up to, hey, I want to pay you, and instead of using Venmo, I'll send you some Binance stablecoins. It's also the idea that you can start to use this as sort of a remittance, international, like global settlement layer that can be frictionless and reduce a lot of the costs associated with the traditional remittance industry. So that's another part that I think Harmony is excited to go into, and we're exploring with new partners and new areas.
No, for sure. It's the thing that drives me crazy. It's 2020, and yet still when I want to send money across borders internationally, it takes a long time and it is way, way too expensive. It's insane. You know, when I could send a message across the world, I could even send a package. With Amazon, I could ship a package, you know, next day shipping. But when I want to send money, I'm getting charged through the roof. So that's an aspect of blockchain that I'm also personally excited about. Now, One big issue that I know that I've dealt, and when I speak with beginners to blockchain, family members who don't understand it, something that really is a barrier of entry for them is kind of the UI UX. Is that blockchain, the underlying technology is really maturing, improving, getting faster. When do you see the UI UX gets to the point for blockchain where even my grandmother, who doesn't have to understand blockchain, when does it get to the point where she could then use blockchain?
That's a very, very good question. And in fact, I see this every day. Even myself, using blockchain is quite a pain. Having to write down all my private keys and make sure they're stored safely, and I have all my backups, and even, when someone wants to send something to me, copying my, public key so that then they can send it to me, and managing all that stuff is a real headache. And I wish it were, I'm trying to think of what user experience I would want, but something more like a Venmo, or there's just so many good examples these days of smooth, slick, effortless, frictionless user experiences, and blockchain has a long way to go for that. I think that there are different teams working on that, though, specifically within the wallet segment. I think the wallets kind of become this interface for users to protocols. And a few wallets that I really like, one that we're working with is Fortmatic. Actually, they just rebranded, I think, to Magic. And what they do is you don't even see a private key. You put in your email, you put in your phone number, and they will text you or email you, a magic link that you click. And when you click it, you go through, you reload the page, and all of a sudden you're connected with your wallet. So I think there are people out there building it. Right now, Harmony, our team is not directly focused on the user experience because we are kind of infrastructure, if you think about it. But we're very keen on working with teams that are solving this, because fundamentally, it is one of the biggest barriers. It's hard for me to use this. There's no way I could get my parents, even my brother, who, is pretty tech savvy, he would get too frustrated. He would walk away. So it is a major barrier to broader adoption of the technology.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And Nick, you mentioned you guys are infrastructure, and you guys enable projects like you mentioned, like the Magic Wallet to be built on it. What other projects, are working right now in Harmony that maybe something that's not sexy, that people haven't heard about, but you think is really important and will deliver on their promises?
That's a really good question. Well, we have a pretty broad base of partners and projects building with us. Something that we haven't touched on yet in this interview is that I'm also very bullish about blockchain gaming. So one of our major partners from the very beginning is this blockchain gaming company called Animoca. Actually, they originally are more of a mobile free-to-play game company, but they were early in mobile, and now they see the revolution happening again in blockchain, so they want to be early to that. So I'm very excited about gaming, and one of the things that I think makes Harmony good for gaming again is that it's cheap. Games that have been built on Ethereum are now priced out because, okay, I want to buy an item, it's going to cost me 50 cents to send that transaction. It's kind of a non-starter. So I'm excited about that. And I think that blockchain gaming was kind of in the common dialogue maybe a year or two ago, but it's kind of been eclipsed by DeFi. But I think that it still deserves to be a big part of the conversation. Some other use cases that I think are really exciting that are being built on us have more to do with what I was talking about with this cross-border remittance sort of use case. And I think that Ripple kind of popularized this whole idea of blockchains being an international settlement layer. But people haven't really been taking it seriously, but we're really excited about connecting different corridors across different countries. And in order to do that, actually, your partners, it's not like, we're not trying to do it in a way that is about trying to circumvent regulation. Not at all. We are partnering with local on the ground fintech companies who have the right licenses, and can actually distribute that last mile of the payment. So that's something that it's actually not that sexy. I think DeFi is way sexier, it's way cooler, it's faster paced, but I think that it is a very tangible use case that is not sexy because it's so hard to actually make it happen. But we're very committed to. We have a whole team on our sub team within our company that is working on those partnerships to get those rolling.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, let's put that. I want to continue in that line of thought, but let's put that aside for a second because you did mention gaming and blockchain, and I'm a big gamer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to be clear here because blockchain. When people hear blockchain games, they might think, oh, this is a game that's running on the blockchain. It's actually, I mean, up until now, it's mostly been NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that are kind of allowing them to kind of own items within games or own assets within games for the blockchain. Do you see, in that specific use case, do you see the potential for kind of mainstream games or this idea where right now, a common business model, battle royale games are very big right now, where the game is free to play, but you could buy a costume, you could buy assets, you could buy guns, but then you only own it in that game. And do you see that blockchain kind of holds this promise that, hey, I'll buy a skin in one game, a costume in one game, but because it's on the blockchain, I'm actually able to migrate it and use it for all my compatible games.
Yeah, and I think that one of the major promises for blockchain is a user-owned economy, and I'm kind of drawing this from a blog post by I think his name is Jesse from Variant Fund, and the whole thesis of the fund is the fact that we're entering a new kind of form of capitalism in which user-owned technologies, user-owned platforms will be dominant. And so the reason I bring that up is I think that gaming is specifically very ripe for that. And it's going to be about people who not only have items that can transfer between the games, but they even have some kind of stake. Like, what if let's say your World of Warcraft currency, or I don't know what kind of like currencies are popular now in like Fortnite. I haven't been playing games since I was quite a bit younger, which is why I'm dating myself with the World of Warcraft reference. But the point is, imagine if your World of Warcraft gold was not just, something you could spend on potions or, buying other items within the game, but some kind of ownership about the future of the game. And if you could get involved in that level, it's like a share in the game. In fact, as more people subscribe to World of Warcraft, that can maybe bring you income and revenue. And then you kind of start to create this, a very different dynamic of loyalty. And it's almost like the game becomes almost real, like a real place. And that's why people talk about the metaverse. And so, in the metaverse, there's obviously this concept that items transport between different realms. And I think that that's definitely part of it, is that the interoperability of these different worlds and these games, if they can be on the blockchain, they're more able to sort of bridge between each other. But again, there has to be kind of some incentive for those games to want to accept each other's items. So maybe that's a way of user acquisition. Like, hey, Fortnite players, if you have this skin, when you come play my game, you get special powers. But I guess I'm still trying to see how the ecosystem will form. It definitely will, but I'm not sure yet how. But I'm excited about this whole idea of users having deeper ownership. People are so invested. Like, I mean, when I played video games, I would get so invested. But I mean, ultimately, what did I really have? I didn't have anything. I was just spending money. I was spending time and not getting a say. So I think this is going to change everything.
Mm-hmm. I know, especially when you're speaking about this idea of private ownership. I think in today's electronic world, it's not just games, but I think it's a big issue of private data, where it seems like something so simple that, hey, I should own my data. And I'm a person, like I own my name, I own my face. I should also own the history of my actions, both in the real world and on the internet. How do you see blockchain playing a role in this idea, especially right now, where we're kind of the big tech companies are under the heat, the magnifying glass of the US government, with Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon all right now being in their monopoly, they're being checked for monopoly by the US government. How do you see blockchain playing a role in kind of enabling the private ownership of the user's data? And how do you see that future playing out for the end user?
Yeah, well, I have a anecdote, which is that just the other day I was scrolling through Twitter, and recently I ended up ending a relationship, and so now I'm recently single, and very, very creepily, all of a sudden, these ads for dating apps start showing up on my Twitter feed, and I just made me feel like, how are they? I don't think I'm searching anything. I wasn't searching anything related to dating or whatever. So I don't know how it's possible that they would know this about me. And it's a very unsettling feeling to just feel like you're being watched all the time. And it's just with every passing year, it just gets more and more obvious and evident. And I genuinely feel like Jeff Bezos or, Tim Cook, Larry Page, these guys know too much. They have too much power. And the thing is, we're still very early on this digital transformation. The internet is still early. I know it doesn't seem that way, but think about it. Less than half of the population of the world is on the internet still. And so if they're too powerful now, they're only going to get more and more and more powerful. As the world goes more and more digital, they will have more and more information, and AI as technology is only getting stronger. In fact, before I did blockchain, I worked in the AI industry. And I was actually kind of sickened by the way that it was just concentrating wealth and power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. Whether it's, the tech giants in the US or the tech giants in China, Baidu, and all the equivalent and Tencent, all those equivalent technology players in China, they have the same dynamic going on. And it's a scary future that we're heading into. And so that's why, to me, blockchain represents an opportunity for us to redesign, re-architect these applications that we now have come to depend on. And I think in the same way that we were talking about user-owned games, this applies to social apps. What if I owned my data that is used in Facebook? Or what if I own all of my Gmail data? It's not sitting in the cloud in someone else's server, or maybe it is probably still in the cloud, but I have the private key that allows me to access it. So it can't be mined by, Google's, crazy Google brain, whatever they have going on, right? So the point is, I think blockchain enables us to give the power of an ownership of data back to the individual. And I think this is going to be extremely powerful. And I just want to say one caveat is that I'm not opposed to AI and machine learning. It's a powerful technology. It's going to change the world. It will enable us, hopefully, to work less and have a more abundant society. But the truth is, we need to do it responsibly. It can't be, AI is too powerful for any one person to have control over. And I think our best, kind of the yin to AI's yang, is blockchain. Blockchain is going to be able to balance the power between the individuals and the people who are in control of the algorithms. So that's something I'm really passionate about too. But I think, again, that's actually going to take a little bit longer to get there, because it will require people to start caring more about privacy. It also require like a whole layers of infrastructure to be built out besides just the blockchain. The blockchain is more of like the off layer, whereas the decentralized storage of this data has to be kind of figured out. And how do you actually do data mining on a decentralized, encrypted data lake is its own problem. So I think we're still a ways away, but it's something that we need to start now.
Wow, that's a really cool thought. I've actually never heard of someone, so, comparing the blockchain as the yang to the AI as yin. And I now that you mentioned, I really do think it's a very interesting take, because the AI is kind of this centralized kind of knowledge and processing power, whereas the blockchain tries to democratize
Yeah,
kind of technology. Very cool, very good point. And yeah, I'm telling you, man, Twitter and Facebook, they're always listening to you. They know what you're up to.
totally.
Yeah, right. You got to be careful. And speaking on that idea, I mean, like you mentioned that you were passionate, about these things, and so you decided to found Harmony and kind of make a difference. And Harmony is a member of the Blockchain Education Alliance, a company for blockchain in education led by Mousebelt. Is there any focus or emphasis at the university level to kind of engage with the future developers and engineers of tomorrow who kind of also have the same passion that you have? Is Harmony involved in that?
Well, obviously, we're members of the Blockchain Education Alliance. And as part of that, we really want to support students, and we want to help spread the knowledge. I think that it's important that we prepare the next generation to take on this vision and to help build the future, right? I don't think that we can do this alone. I think it's going to take many generations of people actually to realize all the potential use cases and the power of blockchain. So I think that's why for Harmony, it's really important that we participate in trying to prepare the next generation. And honestly, we would love to help more with teaching different kinds of, whether it's like workshops on protocol layer stuff. That's really our specialty. Lately, we've been getting more into decentralized applications. We'd love to help fund students who want to build decentralized applications on Harmony. In fact, we have a grant program. So if anyone is interested, I encourage them to go to harmony.one/grants. We have roughly $7 million set aside just to fund developers. And there is no, like, some of the smartest, most creative people in the world are students. And they are probably sitting on a gold mine of different ideas that they want to build. And they may need funding. They're like, hey, I might want to take some time off of school, or hey, when I graduate, this is an idea I have. If you're one of those people, you should talk to us, because we'd love to support you to build on Harmony. So I think that's kind of the extent of what we're doing now, but I'm really excited about working more with Mousebelt in the coming years to grow that infrastructure out. Because again, blockchain education, it's in fact, one of the last things I want to say, blockchain is so new that it's actually very hard to study it in school because there's no classes. I mean, and the classes that you're going to take, the curriculum's been designed maybe a couple years ago, maybe at best a year ago. It's already out of date. This industry moves so quickly that you need to be up with it on almost like a daily basis, so that you know that your knowledge is fresh. And so that's another challenge that I think some of the students will have. That said, there's still a lot of very valuable knowledge. Any kind of computer science knowledge will be extremely applicable. Cryptography, game theory, there are a lot of sort of fundamental underpinnings of blockchain technology you can still learn, but nothing will substitute getting your hands dirty in the actual industry. And if there's any way that Harmony can help bridge that gap between academia and education with the real industry, we're very happy to help.
Well, Nick, I really appreciate you taking the time to help explain all these aspects and really give me some wonderful insights, and I'm sure all the people watching as well. And we really appreciate the work that Harmony is doing on both ends of the spectrum. And we're excited to see what Harmony brings to the table. You guys are ready the first with Sharding and Proof of Stake, and I can't wait to see what Harmony brings next time. Nick, thanks so much for taking the time. And for all our viewers at home, this is Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.